Okay, today I want to talk about the power of perception. There's food you're not supposed to eat, right? That's clear. And so usually we think of those foods and we say, okay, I'm not going to eat those foods. And it becomes a battle of how long, we can use our willpower to stop ourselves from eating those. But an opposite way to approach that is to change up the way you perceive those foods so that you don't even crave them anymore. Right? And so it may sound kind of far-fetched, but it's absolutely possible. And it's something that you've already experienced. If you've ever, kind of gotten sick, right? If you ever you got some flu or some kind of stomach bug, and at the same time, like earlier that night, you ate some food, sometimes you start to link them together and you start to think of them differently. I could tell, I remember a time, I must have been 7 or 8 years old. And when I was a kid, I used to love Hostess cupcakes. And, I used to every day. It was a big thing. I loved them. Well, one day, my older brother's friend was there, and he's like, oh, yeah, they make those out of animal lard. And he went into the whole thing about animal lard. Now, I didn't even know what animal lard was, but the way he described it was just sounded disgusting. So I go and I look at the cupcakes, and I'm like, oh, my God, it does. It says lard right on there. And so for whatever reason, to me, that was gross. Never ate one again. So it wasn't through willpower that I stopped myself. It wasn't through knowing that I shouldn't eat it. It was in the way that I perceived the food that changed it all at once. And so when you find that there's foods that you're struggling with, instead of just trying to kind of willpower your way through them, another way to go about it is to change the way that you perceive them. And so there's a few different ways to do this. Kind of depends on what the food or the drink is. But one way you can start is by researching it. And so much the same way that I didn't know what cupcakes were made out of, you can look and study what the food that you're struggling with is made out of. I did this recently. One candy that I like is peanut butter cups. And so I went and I studied, all the ingredients in it. And I can tell you, it's not as appealing afterwards because, when you look up and you see all the different things that are in it, it just doesn't sound as good. Things you can't pronounce, things you're not sure of. So just that alone can sometimes change your perception of it. But you can go even deeper into it. If I wanted to, I could go into what those ingredients even are. As I said, I didn't even know what some of these things were. But so you can research even deeper and say, what is that thing? What's, TBQ? What's that thing? It's some preservative. Okay, that's gross. And you can research that a little bit more. But what it does is it changes the way that you think of these foods or these drinks. So research what they're made out of. The next thing you can do is you can research what the things that are in it do to your body. This is especially powerful with sugar, because sugar is one of these things that, it's just so common now that we don't even question it, but it's a very processed thing. It's very unnatural, and the effects it has on our body, are very negative, but we don't think about them very often. So if you take 5-10 minutes on Google and do some research about what the effects of, just sugar are on your body. And again, it could be anything, any of the ingredients, look and see what effect they have on your body. Some of the dyes, some of the chemicals, some of the preservatives, things that we've been trained to overlook, what effect do they have on our body? And so when you do this, again, what it's doing is it's shifting the perception. And one other way you can do this is this is a little bit different. I like the ingredients because it's very real. But another way you can do this is, a lot of times when we think of the food, we're thinking about the flavor of it, right? So I'll go with my peanut butter cups. If I think about the peanut butter cups, when I think about them, I'm thinking about the anticipation, going to get them, looking forward to it, and then the actual moment of eating them. And then that's about it. That's how I perceive the peanut butter cups. I don't really think about the effect they have on me an hour after. I don't think about the effect, if I ate them all the time, the effect they'd have on my body. So one kind of little trick you can do is you can imagine yourself, standing in front of a mirror that you normally stand in front of, maybe in your bathroom. You can imagine yourself, looking at yourself in that mirror, just got out of the shower, maybe you're not wearing any clothes. You can imagine you're standing on a scale. And while you're doing that, you can imagine yourself eating whatever food it is that you're having challenges with, right? Because what we're doing here is we're linking up that food with the effect it has, right? We'll put those together. Because sometimes when we think about the food, again, we only think about the anticipation and the experience of eating it. And a lot of times we don't think about the long-term effect in any sort of visceral way. And so when you do this here, you're changing that up. You're starting to think of that food and you're thinking about the effect it has on your weight. Right? So that can be a very powerful experience. And I can tell you it's a lot more powerful when you actually do it and when you take the time, close your eyes, and really imagine yourself standing in front of that mirror, standing on a scale, eating that food. I promise you that'll be a perception change for you, and you'll get a first-hand experience of what I'm talking about. But again, these are just a few ideas, but it's up to you. The main thing is here that we want to shift the perception of any foods that you're struggling with so that you perceive them in a new way and you change the associations you have with them. Because once you do that, the beauty here is that it doesn't take willpower, it doesn't take effort to avoid them. The old cravings just kind of fade away. And that's what you're looking for. We want to find the easiest ways possible to maintain our weight and our health. Okay? So play around with this week, and I'll talk to you next week.